Starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
A very good evening. It's 9 p.m. and this is Patrick Christys Tonight.
Misgendered me again.
Okay.
Multiple times.
Gotcha.
Both of you have.
Wasn't intentional, but if you want to take it personal, that's also...
Well, she did do it intentionally twice.
You're talking to me too.
Yeah, the clapback against the transgender crybabies begins, but preschool children as young as 3 were referred to a transgender clinic. Is this not child abuse? I will be speaking to Mike Freer MP, whose office was set on fire in a suspected arson attack. I am asking, how safe are our MPs? Hospital parking charges are an absolute disgrace. Patients and visitors were hit with £156 million worth of charges in the last year. That's a tax on people who are sick, dying, or the people who want to see those people. Should we scrap hospital parking charges? And there's loads of royal news about tonight. King Charles looks adorable with his grandkids, doesn't he? That's the ones he's allowed to see, that is. And Sarah Ferguson will get a royal funeral. Is it just me who thinks that's absolutely bonkers? On my sofa tonight, we have got Christine Hamilton, we've got Adam Brooks and Matthew Larzer. This is Patrick Christys Tonight. Here we go. All right, loads on tonight. That's just the first hour. Email me, though. Should 3-year-olds be sent to gender clinics? gbviews@gbnews.com. Oh, and talking of children, we'll be asking you to guess various GB News presenters from their childhood pictures. So I'm going to start with one here. I think that's pretty obvious, isn't it? I think that's pretty obvious. I spoke to him before and he told me that the monocle was photoshopped, although he cannot confirm that. But anyway, look, we're going to be guessing a load of these. I will see you after the headlines.
Patrick, thank you, and good evening. Well, the UK was battered by snow, wind and rain today as Storm Gerrit barrelled in, leaving homes without power and drivers trapped in their cars. Police Scotland declared a major incident as snow brought cars to a standstill on the A9 to Aviemore, and 27,000 homes in northern Scotland were also without power, with local energy company SSEN saying they restored power to 8,000 homes and are currently working hard to reconnect the rest. Passengers on the East Coast main line between London and Scotland were told not to travel, and thousands of other travellers experienced delays at airports with flights grounded. Multiple weather warnings remain in place across the rest of the UK this evening. And ferry passengers were hit as well today. They were facing delays of up to an hour and a half at the port of Dover. That was due to the French police going sick. And there was increased traffic as well at the port as people tried to get away for a post-Christmas trip. Enhanced passport checks by French border officials following the UK's withdrawal from the EU also increased processing times. Now the queue is about 5 to 10 minutes. The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has announced that the spring budget will be announced on the 6th of March next year. Reports are also suggesting Downing Street could axe inheritance tax and reduce income tax. Sir Keir Starmer has seemingly instructed his front bench team to finalise their manifesto plans, telling shadow ministers to have their policy proposals ready by mid-January. Now, in the United States, the Michigan Supreme Court has rejected an attempt to remove the former President Donald Trump from the 2024 presidential ballot. The ruling is in contrast to the recent legal ruling in Colorado, where Mr. Trump was disqualified from running for president due to his alleged role in the Capitol Hill riots. That decision has been paused pending an appeal. In France, the former president of the European Commission and the architect of the euro, Jacques Delors, has died at the age of 98. Monsieur Delors was a leading figure on the French political left during the 1980s and was perhaps best known in Britain for his feisty relationship with the then Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher. France's President Emmanuel Macron has honoured his fellow politician today, saying he'd been a tireless architect of our Europe. And lastly, the number of people shopping on the high street in the UK was down more than 20% yesterday, Boxing Day. Figures found that whilst footfall was up before 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it was significantly lower across the day as a whole. The only location to experience an overall rise in high street visitors was central London. That's the news on GB News, on TV, online, DA+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is Britain's news channel.
All right, loads on tonight. I'm starting with this. We have to stand up against the mutilation, indoctrination and adultification of children. Shocking new details reveal that more than 70 children aged just 3 and 4 years old were sent to an NHS transgender service. There were also 140 5-year-olds and 169 6-year-olds. Sending preschoolers to the Gender Identity Development Service was, in my view, akin to child abuse. We have here a potent combination of activist groups who want to push this on children to suit their agenda, child psychologists who, I would argue, need to see a psychologist themselves, and dodgy parents. Yes, I mean it when I say dodgy parents. What kind of parent looks at their 3-year-old and sends them off to a trans clinic? I'll tell you who. Parents who are so desperate for their child to be special, unique and different that they will go to any lengths to try and make that a reality. Parents are desperate for their little one to be gifted, to be a genius, to be a prodigy. When they realise that that isn't happening, they're finding another way to make them stand out. These are just my views, of course. That's what I reckon is going on here. I think that's being quite generous, actually, because I suspect in reality that it is possibly a Munchausen by proxy situation, and the NHS has just been lapping that up. I would love to see the correlation between parents who decided to raise their child as gender neutral, read them books about gender-questioning youngsters and virtue-signalled on social media about being a trans ally, and then miraculously deciding that their own child was born into the wrong body and carting them off to a clinic when they're barely out of nappies. We are going to witness, I think, a tidal wave of lawsuits in the decade ahead, lawsuits brought by young adults who feel as though they were medically mutilated by overeager medical professionals when they were too young to make their own decisions. But unfortunately, that also means a tidal wave of ruined lives. One victim, and I do class her as a victim, who has now detransitioned, told The Telegraph that she now feels like a mutilated experiment gone wrong. She was reportedly referred to the Gender Identity Development Service by a trans charity and only saw professionals 3 times before being referred to the adult clinic after turning 17. She claims she was referred to adult services, she was prescribed cross-sex hormones and put on the waiting list for a mastectomy after her 2nd appointment. The best solution that they've come up with so far is to raise the age of referral to 7. That is absolutely ridiculous. Children like different things. Boys might like dresses. They might like a Barbie doll. Girls might like to be a tomboy. You have to let these things run a bit, don't you? Does anybody watching this right now think it would have been a good thing for their lives if they were defined by the person they were when they were 3 years old, or 5 years old, or 7 years old? No, me neither. I can barely remember being that age. It is not inclusive, kind or woke to want to medically intervene in a child's genitalia or hormones, and we shouldn't normalise that behaviour. Let's get the thoughts of my panel now. We've got broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton. We've got pub owner and landlord and fan favourite, man of the people, Adam Brooks. Boxer now as well. He does it all, this guy. Former Labour Party advisor Matthew Lars. And just before I get stuck into this, I do want to go to a comment that was made to us by a spokesperson from the Tavistock Clinic. They say that the GIDS, the Gender Identity Service pathway, provides psychological assessment, treatment and support for families. So we are unable to provide figures on those who have undergone physical interventions. The outcome of gender identity development in younger, pre-pubertal young people is uncertain, and so treatment is not provided. Most often, there would be a one-off discussion with the parents, carers, to provide support and advice. So that is obviously what they have to say to all of that. Christine, I'll start with you on this. Do you think it is child abuse to be sending kids as young as 3 to somewhere where they will be openly told to question their gender, essentially?
It is child abuse. I mean, that is a very broad term, and it's a very terrifying term, but it is a form of child abuse. If this was going on in a primitive society, we would herald it as child abuse, wouldn't we? I've just had a week with literally these age groups we're talking about, a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. They believe in Santa Claus. They believe in the tooth fairy.
As they should.
As they should. Past the watershed just, sorry. They're learning to tie their shoelaces. It is utterly absurd, and this is coming from the parents. No, they don't have any idea what gender is. They don't know what sex is. They know that he's a girl and he's a boy, but they don't know what that means. It is absolutely ridiculous. If your child, aged whatever, 7, 5, whatever, said they identified as a superhero, would you tell them to go and jump off a building? No, you wouldn't. So you just say, oh, well, that's lovely, darling, and have...
Well, you never know with the state of our education system.
It's ridiculous. And, you know, we can't have legal sexual intercourse until a girl is 16. They can't smoke until we're whatever, and we're going to outlaw smoking completely. Drinking, going in the army, learning to drive, all these things. Wait until you are just about approaching sensibility and normality. This is one of the most serious things that can possibly happen to anybody, and to allow it to happen to a child of 3 or 7 is ludicrous.
Adam, do you blame the parents? I'm increasingly coming down on the side of parents in this, in terms of that it's their fault.
I've got skin in the game here. I've got a 4-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old daughter. Neither know enough in this world to think that they can change their sex. My 4-year-old thinks she's Elsa from Frozen, for God's sake. So, you know, 3- and 4-year-olds being referred, it's the parents. They're warped. I believe they're perverted. I think they are mentally ill to push their children into this. At the end of the day, a child cannot be charged for a crime, no matter how serious, under 10 years of age. How can they be responsible enough to want to change their sex? I think we are going headfirst into a society where warped ideas and ideologies like this are becoming the norm because of these activist groups and because of these, you know, weirdo, liberal, divs on social media that are pushing this as well.
All right, Matthew, you know, look, we've got here more than 70 children aged 3 and 4 were sent to a controversial NHS transgender clinic. I mean, is there any justification for that?
Well, look, I think I'm very glad to hear from the in the statement from the Tavistock that these were just conversations that they had, and for them to absolutely reiterate there was no treatment involved. So it seems to me what happened is that they were basically sort of had conversations. What do you do? You know, kind of support group style conversations. Now, whether or not that's appropriate is a second question. But at least we're not talking about doing anything irreversible or medicalising their decisions. I mean, what worries me is that, you know, I played with a doll when I was 5 or 6. It was pretty radical in the 1980s. But you know, is there anybody that actually this is the most reinforcing of gender stereotypes? It's the most conservative with a small c thing imaginable, because you said it's not actually gender neutral. It's people who are very into gender and are saying, you know, oh, my kid's in the wrong one. So it's actually a reinforcement of kind of all of the things that, in a sense, the Liberal left has spent 40 years trying to get away from.
Look, loads of people might be looking at a clip of that online and saying, you know, I'm way out of line there for that. I've got no idea what it's like to be born into the wrong body, Christine. I've got no idea what it's like to have a child who's, you know, 3 years old, who is, you know, they would believe, no doubt, visibly and in all of their actions in the wrong gender. I mean, do you buy any of that?
No, I don't buy any of that. I do buy that some adults feel they're in the wrong body. Of course, I buy all that, but I do not buy that a 3-year-old, they have absolutely no conception whatsoever. It's the woke parents who've got somehow into their heads. And we all know people who are, I say we all know, we know of people who are older who have regretted. There's a lady who's been on this sofa, Debbie Hayton, and I remember first meeting Debbie way back in Edinburgh, at the Edinburgh Festival, and she now will tell you that she deeply regrets transitioning from a man, and she wishes it had never happened, and it's a long story, and hers not much. I mean, she didn't start to do it until she was in her 20s.
I mean, my worry is that because of the excesses of the Tavistock, it brings into question the whole issue, and I think that people in their teens should have access to services, not to medical transitioning, but to discussions and services once they are older. But having 3 or 4-year-olds just pushes.
But that's an interesting point, because what you've done there is kind of gently raise the age limit question on this. Now, what they're saying at the moment is, well, look, children under the age of 7 shouldn't do it. I mean, 7, good grief, come off it still.
So we have got Hollywood actors and actresses that are parading their kids around like fashion accessories, like the Chihuahuas were paraded around in the 90s, right? There can't be that many actors and actresses that have trans kids or kids that want to be. They are doing it because they think it signals virtue and they think it's trendy. And these woke liberal idiots on social media spread it around. Debbie Hayton even says on his or her website, he would never... She... OK.
Honestly, she wants...
I believe it's a he. He says that he cannot change his sex, so I'm going to refer to him as a he, that he realises that he cannot change his sex. He had an operation to change his body, but he didn't change his sex.
But I think it's about adults.
She does like...
I think it's about social media.
The key thing is that people are old enough to be able to do it, Adam, and to be able to make decisions. And I think we can all agree that, I mean, there's an obvious time, which is that when it's the secondary school age, is the 11 plus, before people should be having those conversations. Seems to me the natural time. If people are questioning...
You know what? One of the joys of children...
That's not having medical transitioning at that age, that's having conversations.
One of the great joys of children is their vivid imaginations.
Yes.
Let them have those imaginations, but don't turn them into...
But there's a few things wrapped up here. If this had gone unchecked, right, we would. The facts are we would have had activist groups who were perfectly willing to push people who were just out of nappies towards transitioning. OK, we clearly had a ready army of parents who felt as though that was OK. We know that there's been issues in schools as well, and we know that there's some political pushback on this. You know, I really am concerned that if it wasn't for discussions like the ones that we have tonight, or in other certain quarters of society, if this had gone unchecked, that it would be an absolute disaster and it would be a catalogue of lives ruined. I'm just going to go to the inbox quickly, gbviews@gbnews.com. Hi, Patrick. My grandson goes to an all-boys school. He and his mates were in class one day, and a woke teacher, they say, asked what some of the children identified as. He chirped up and said that he now wants to be identified as a helicopter gunship, and everybody fell about laughing. But that is not the most ridiculous extension.
He probably got a detention from that teacher.
That's lovely.
Right, what we need to do is start looking who's funding these activist groups, because there's a sinister agenda, and I believe they're ulterior...
I think we can all agree the activist groups shouldn't be referring people, should they?
The activist groups shouldn't be referred to.
I don't understand why. That wouldn't happen in any other part of the health service.
But the one thing that people, you know...
They've all been referred by parents, not by activists.
Well, I think some of them went, but the parents went to the activist group, and the activist group went to the Tavistock. That's my understanding.
So that's going to stop. That's going to stop under the new people because they're not right in the head.
Well, there is an argument to suggest...
the NHS pays for it.
There is an argument to suggest that a lot of these groups initially came out of the gay rights movement, which I think most people now really would agree was a good thing, right? And then once they'd achieved those things, they then felt as though that they had more to do. They needed a kind of new raison d'etre, and maybe they've now...
A lot of gay people I know and work with do not agree with this trans agenda.
Exactly that. OK, well, look, there's still loads to come. The inbox is on fire at the moment. GBviews at gbnews.com. Keep that coming. Up next, the safety of our politicians is massively back in the spotlight after a Tory MP, Mike Freer's office, was hit by a suspected arson attack on Christmas Eve. He joins me live shortly. You will not want to miss that. Plus, we do have an extra special game that we're playing later on. And can you guess who this angelic little GB News presenter is? All right, there you go. It's on your screens right now. We'll be teasing a few of these childhood pictures of some of our presenters here. See if you can guess who they are. We reveal the full list at 10:30 p.m. I'll see you in a tick.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews at gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Welcome back. Now, fire crews were called to the office of a Conservative MP on Christmas Eve after a suspected arson attack. Police are investigating after Mike Frere's office in North London was partially damaged by the blaze. People watching on TV now will be able to see the extensive damage there. If you're listening on radio, I would urge you to go and have a look at this online a little bit later on. I mean, the thing's been essentially gutted, right? I'm now joined by Mike Frere, and I'm very grateful for him joining us. Thank you very, very much, Mike. It's great to have you on the show, albeit under incredibly damaging circumstances, really. It's still an active crime scene, I believe. Could you just talk our viewers and listeners through what you know about this and how it makes you feel in terms of safety as an MP?
Well, first of all, we were called out to a fire at the back of the office. Someone had set fire to an old shed which we used to store just surplus materials, but it's very close to the building, and that seems to have taken off. Certainly pictures of the fire seems to be quite severe. It damaged a ground floor office, which you can see the picture on the screen, and also a rear office on the floor above. All we know is that after the police and the fire brigade, who were there incredibly quickly, got the fire out, we were able to access the CCTV because we had no power because all the electrics basically had fused and melted. And they were able to see that there were some suspects who were seen on the cameras in the car park leaving, and I'm told the police are now actively pursuing the information as to who these suspects might be, and then once we get some arrests, then we'll be able to know what the motives were, because at the moment we don't know if it was what I would call a random incident, if there is such a thing, or whether there was a political angle to it. At this stage we don't know. But over the years I've had numerous what I would call low-level incidents, from notes on the car to mock Molotov cocktails on the doorstep, to slightly more serious incidents. I've had a couple of run-ins with Muslims Against Crusades, and obviously, most recently, the man that went on to kill my colleague David Amos when he was arrested and interviewed, also admitted he'd come to Finchley armed with the intention to harm. So, sadly, over the years, a lot of the low-level stuff has become almost routine, but there's been 2 or 3 quite serious incidents, this being the last and latest one.
You've had an incredible series of near misses and an incredible amount of threats. And I mean this with absolute respect, Mike, right? If it takes the next level and you do actually come to some physical harm, the thing that stands out for me is that no one should be surprised about that, because how much more evidence do you need that something is cooking when it comes to your personal safety here? You mentioned all of those things. Has that ever made you want to just not be an MP, just go and work in accounts somewhere and just get out the front line?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the day of the week, you ask me, and certainly my husband certainly thinks it's not worth the job in terms of the worry. Am I going to come home at night? Am I going to be, survive the day? But the job, yes, it is a worry. You do get stressed by, having to keep, if you like, looking over your shoulder. But also have to balance that up with the fact that we do a lot of good, and dealing with constituents can be very rewarding. In fact, my inbox is on the whole incredibly positive and warm, giving me a lot of support for the attack. But like every job, you do sometimes have to weigh up, is it worth the risk, not just to yourself, but also to your family? And importantly, my staff. Because people forget that when someone sends a rude email, I mean, I actually got an email yesterday saying, I'm obviously the kind of person that deserves to be burnt. But what kind of person sends that? But it's my staff that see that. It's my staff that answer the phone to abusive people. It's my staff that answer the door to abusive people. And people forget that they should not have to put up with this either.
Something stands out to me about your constituency, Mike. I used to live right near there, actually, as well. It is an incredibly heavily populated area with the Jewish community, and obviously there have been marked issues at the moment when it comes to Israel, Gaza, etc. that's taking place. Have you seen any increase in hate when it comes to that? Do you think that makes you more of a target when you're representing one of the more densely populated Jewish areas in the country? How do you feel about that?
Well, certainly the inbox is incredibly polarised, and because of my support for Israel, then clearly I get tarred as a baby killer, etc., etc. The a man who went on to kill David Amos did describe himself as a soldier of Islamic State. And of course, the Muslim Against Crusades as a group had a long history of targeting people who didn't support, if you like, an Islamic caliphate. So there's clearly an angle there. I can't say the most recent instance on Christmas Eve is linked in that way. But obviously, I know that my constituency is constantly at a state of alert, and many of my Jewish friends have never felt more tense, never felt more afraid. And I visit all of the faith communities in my patch, and only the Jewish community has to have, has to have guards, has to have panic buttons, has to have shutters.
Yep.
It's only the Jewish schools that have to have security. I know no other faith, and so clearly the level of tension is a direct result of what's going on elsewhere in the world. And whatever people's views on Israel, that should not be allowed to poison our democratic debate, but it certainly shouldn't be allowed to be used to target the UK's Jewish community.
No, indeed. I actually did attend, and again, I want to emphasise there is no evidence to say at the moment that the incident that's happened at Mike's office is in any way linked to the Israel-Palestine situation or anything like that. There's no evidence to suggest that at the moment. I did attend a protest outside an MP's office in Bethnal Green, where that particular Labour MP actually was not voting for a ceasefire, and people mobbed up and turned up outside. They obviously weren't in because of that time of night, but I couldn't help but feel as though I was witnessing there literally the visible attempt to intimidate a member of parliament into voting the way that that group of people wanted them to vote. Do you think we're seeing more of that?
Certainly. I think that it's not just MPs' offices. We're seeing it outside shops. Zara have been targeted. Where people disagree with you, in the past you had a healthy disagreement and then just agreed to disagree. Now it's starting to become much more physical, much more intimidatory to ensure that you toe the line. Personally, I think it can be counterproductive. The more people try and intimidate me into a particular stance, the more I'll try and dig my heels in and stick to my own beliefs. But we're definitely seeing a deterioration in the inbox, and we're certainly seeing a deterioration in the style of demonstration to intimidate people to change their minds. And I think that is something we need to get a grip on.
Mike, what's happened with your face-to-face surgeries? You know, if you're getting fake Molotov cocktails on your doorstep and your office has been burnt down, for goodness sake, what does that mean for the way that you interact with the public? Do you want a police officer in your reception 24/7? Where are you at with all of that?
No, so I only do and only ever have done, because it was Mrs Thatcher's constituency, so we are kind of used to extra security. We've always done appointments only. We now have enhanced that people have to prove they're a constituent by either being on the electoral roll, or if they say, I've just moved into the area, well, they must have a lease or a rent book. We've installed what I could like a tiger trap door, so if we do open the door, we've got a second barrier. We have panic buttons. So that's the physical side of being in the office. But I also have must be about 40-year-old mobile home that I tootle around and park on street corners and just let people come and talk to me. We scaled that back, but now if I am on the pavement, then I'll wear a stab vest. If I do what I call supermarket surgeries, where I stand at the door of a supermarket, sometimes people come and talk to me. Funnily enough, sometimes people ask me where the tomatoes are. But basically, I wear a stab vest. And it's also available for my staff.
It's absolutely shocking.
But I don't want a police officer. I wouldn't want a police officer because it changes that dynamic. The fact that our politicians are accessible, our kind of advice surgeries are almost unique. Not many countries have our style of accessibility, and I'd hate to see that taken away. And I certainly wouldn't want a police officer next to me because it changes the dynamic. We just have to be sensible and take extra precautions. And sadly, that does carry its burden on my staff especially, and on myself and my colleagues.
Well, Mike, can I just say thank you very much for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it, and I do hope to talk to you again very, very soon. And obviously, I wish you all the very best to you and your family, and take care and stay safe. That's Mike Freer there, who is a Conservative MP. A spokesperson for the Metropolitan Police has said this. They said an investigation is ongoing following a fire in a shed at the constituency office of MP Mike Freer in North Finchley. Police were called on Sunday the 24th of December by the London Fire Brigade following a fire at the office. There were no reports of any injuries and the fire was put out. The fire is being treated as arson. Officers continue to pursue a number of lines of inquiry to establish who was responsible of the motive of the incident. This has included speaking to local residents and securing and analysing CCTV. GBviews at gbnews.com. When people say politicians are paid too much, and there is a case for that. There is a case for that. Very generous, expensive scheme, getting to vote on their own pay rise, all of that stuff. I'm aware of that. But you also look at the kind of things that they do open themselves up to, and the idea that you would want to go into a line of work where you get paid 90 grand a year, which sounds great initially, but you have to wear a stab vest when you're out in public. I'm not sure that that is really worth it. But moving on, this is another incredibly emotive issue now. It emerges that hospital patients and visitors paid a shocking £146 million in car park charges last year, even though the Tories promised to scrap those charges. So should we be forced to pay for parking at NHS hospitals? You go in there to visit someone who's sick or dying. Is it a tax on that? Criminal barrister, former Tory MP Jerry Hayes goes head-to-head with junior doctor Basha Mukherjee. They disagree in a big way on this, so it should be lively. But before that, let's continue the extra special Christmas game that we've been playing on the show tonight. Which popular GB News star is this on your screens? You can see them on your screens just there. We'll be revealing our epic game of GB News presenter Guess Who in the next hour. See you in a tick.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christys tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hospital parking charges. Scrap them. It's time now for the head-to-head. The amount of money made by hospitals in parking fees has increased by 50% in a year, despite a Conservative manifesto pledge to end the unfair charges. So, figures from NHS England show that hospital patients and visitors paid a whopping £146 million for car parking last year, the equivalent of 400 grand spent in hospital car parks every single day. Tonight we are asking, should we still be shelling out for parking in hospital car parks? I'm joined now by criminal barrister and former Conservative MP Jerry Hayes, who I understand might have had a bit of a bad experience with this recently, and junior doctor Basha Mukherjee to debate this. Thank you very, very much. Look, Jerry, I'll start with you. What's gone on with you? Should we be scrapping hospital parking charges?
Not entirely. £146 million, gone up by 50% since they came back in after COVID, I think last March. And the government says, look, our manifesto pledges, we've made sure that those people most in need don't have to pay. However, £46 million is being paid by low-paid hospital staff. I think that's wrong. £46 million, you've got a health budget. I know it's always under pressure, and it always will be. Whoever's in power is 182 billion. Let's get this in perspective. Let's make sure that there are no charges for those people on the lowest pay scales who work for the NHS.
So you would scrap the charges for the lowest paid NHS workers, but not members of the public. But not members of the public, just so we're clear, Jerry.
The government says, I don't know how true it is, it's just the press release which has come out as a result of the story in the Times and the Daily Mail, who nicked it off the Times, is that, we make sure that those people who are having regular cancer treatment, those people who are having outpatient treatment, those people who need long-term care, they don't have to pay. And if that's true, I'm happy with that. I would like it all to be free, but it's not, and some money is being made. But £146 million, not all of that goes to the health service, because there are third parties who actually run the car park. I'd like to know how much the health service...
Well, this is it. This is the other thing. Now, Basha, I'll turn to you on this. When somebody finds out that a relative has just had a heart attack or they are in intensive care, you've got no idea how long they're going to be in there for. You go, you race to the hospital, you park your car there and you leg it in. Why should anyone be thinking in the back of their mind, have I got enough money to pay for this parking space? Basha?
I think in today's day and age, if you can afford a car, which costs about £3.5 grand on average for a person to run just a car, I think a couple of pounds towards parking fees is really not a lot to ask. And, you know, the numbers are being heightened and just for kind of shock value rather, but actually they're not that much. Actually, they're not even higher as compared to 2019 pre-pandemic. I just feel like the shock value is being created because maybe our population got too used to getting everything free during the pandemic, and now that's slowly being retracted, and I think that's why the reaction's as it is.
I mean, do you know how much it would cost to park at a hospital for, say, 7 hours?
The question really should be...
well, no, that's the question. The question I'm asking is how much does it cost to park up for 7 hours? It's 10 quid.
I don't know hospital. There are different hospitals around the country that are charging different amounts. So I couldn't tell you exactly how much it would be for 7 hours. Information is out there. It's very transparent. You know exactly what you're going in for when you go to park.
Well, that's not necessarily true, you see. So over 7 hours at Wythenshawe Hospital, for example, which was my local hospital when I was growing up, it's a big hospital, would be 15 quid. So if a relative, you get a phone call and a relative is in there, and they've got to have an urgent operation. I mean, you're in there for over 7 hours, right? And you then have to pay 15 quid for that day. And then if you want to go and see him the next day and the next day and the next day... Jerry, I just feel as though this is... When you look at the amount of wastage that there is in the NHS, you know, why should patients and worried loved ones have to pay this amount of money?
I don't think they should. I really don't. I mean, I was in A&E waiting for 13 hours. I don't begrudge that at all, because most people who moan about it don't realise that there are much sicker people coming around the back that we don't actually see. But my wife, you know, we can afford it, but she would have had to pay £18 for 13 hours. Again, low-paid workers in the National Health Service. I mean, going back to what Basha was saying, it is expensive to park, and it's not a couple of quid. If it was a couple of quid, there'd be no problem whatsoever. People on the lowest pay may be having to pay £10 a week, a day. Now, that is not right in the middle of a cost of living crisis.
Basha, would you at least think that staff should get free parking?
It would be great if staff could get free parking, but we have to be realistic here. I understand what you're saying about £10 a day, but I don't think it applies for staff. We actually, when I was working in Royal Derby Hospital, for instance, we actually got a monthly sort of car parking fee thing that actually made it not so expensive day to day. And actually, it made me then find other ways to get into work, which are more eco-friendly. Actually worked out overall more economic for me as well. I started using the public transport. I've recently moved to London and I exclusively use the public transport. I've worked in A&E and had to do really late shifts, and actually there are things available which support staff if they need to leave home late at night. There are staff taxis which the trust pays for. So there are ways that the trusts are trying to support staff as well. And I just think that, you know, I'm happy to pay that much because I know
that's very generous of you. Look, it's very generous of you, you know, to say that, and that's fair enough. That's your view, right? But Jerry, I would say, it's people like, say, my grandmother's age. She's in her mid-80s. She's paid tax all her life. She's paid into the NHS all her life. She wants to go and visit somebody who's a lifelong friend of hers who's also in her mid-80s, who's, say, in a hospital. Why the flipping heck is my grandma paying 15 quid to go and park to see someone? I'm sorry, it just... Well, and if someone wanted routine care at the NHS now, there's every chance you're waiting 6 months for that. I mean, what are we paying for?
I agree. I entirely agree. I think the government's got to look at this again. They will say it's a matter for the health service. But I'd like to know how much the middlemen get. I'd like to know how much the people who run the car parks get. What's their markup?
Well, this is the other important thing. We absolutely need to know that. We need to drill down on that, because if it is all going to the NHS, that's the kind of pill that maybe some people are willing to swallow. But it isn't all going to the NHS, is it? And that's the problem.
Of course it's not. It's the Capita or Serco or some ghastly organisation who run the prison service.
Yeah, I mean, not here to defend themselves, obviously, but yes. Basha, would you be at least willing to maybe put a cap on it? You know, is enough now when it comes to hospital parking charges? You know, we don't want to see them going up anymore, do we? Is there any justification for it, do you think?
I think there needs to be a reality check, because when we look at the numbers, we're looking at 2019, we were paying about 46 million for staff to be paying, and now and we were actually paying, we're currently paying 46 million, but actually in 2019 the staff were paying about 90 million. It seems like the numbers have really gone up because you're comparing with the free services and the slow markup that's been going on in the last couple of years. But actually, we're still paying less than what we were paying in 2019, which I think is something we should be positive about. We can't always expect things to be free, especially in the current climate. If we want the NHS to survive, then we have to be willing to, you know, put back some of that money. And I understand what you're saying, sir, about, you know, the middleman making the money. But unfortunately, at this point in time, there is not much options available to not have that happen, essentially. But a lot of the money does go back into maintaining the staff parking, and whatever's left over, actually a lot of it goes into patient services.
Well, there we go. Yeah, I know, it's difficult to know exactly how much, isn't it? But these things are going to have to be drilled down. And actually, I'll be honest with you, I feel incredibly passionately about this, right? And I'm going to continue to look into this, and hopefully over the course of the week and into next week, I can get some of these answers about, you know, the amount of middlemen, the car parking firms that are being paid for this, and what level of this money actually goes into making us all better in the NHS. But look, both of you, can I just say thank you very much for coming on. Great chat there. Criminal barrister, former Tory MP Jerry Hayes, junior doctor Basha Mukherjee there. Loads of emails on this. Junior doctors, it says here, bleating about not being paid enough, but they're happy for parking charges as well for the poorest in society. There's a heck of a lot of that. Do factory workers pay to park? I'm not quite sure, Johnny, possibly not. Depends on the factory. I'm a registered nurse in an acute hospital in a rural area. The charge for parking on site is deducted at source from my salary. I have no alternative means of travel. Our fees have risen twice in the past year. Lucy, good grief, but this is it. I find it genuinely morally unconscionable. And you look at the amount of waste in the NHS at the moment, and I think that is one area where we really can decide to make some cutbacks. Nobody should have to pay for hospital parking when they've got a loved one. You should have it in your mind. When someone is desperately ill inside, you shouldn't even be thinking about, good grief, if I've got money to park my car here, am I going to have to go now or get a ticket and miss them being unwell? But anyway, look, it wouldn't be Christmas without the royals. Fergie has said that she's feeling grateful in a thinly veiled message to the King and Queen after they invited her back into the fold on Christmas Day. Editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday, Charlotte Griffiths, joins me for a special Christmas Royal Roundup. But let's continue our very special Christmas game for you. Can you guess which adorable young GB News presenter this is? On your screen right now. We will be revealing all a little later on. Stay tuned.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
All right, welcome back. Loads of royal stuff about today. I'm going to get stuck straight into it with Charlotte Griffiths, editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday. Charlotte, thank you very much. Is it right that Sarah Ferguson, a.k.a. Fergie, is going to get a royal funeral?
I think so, because she is the mother of 2 of our princesses. She's currently performing quite an important duty, which is keeping an eye on Prince Andrew. And they have this extraordinary arrangement where they're obviously divorced, but they live together, but they're not back together. But actually, you know, for all the mistakes Andrew's made in terms of his car crash interview, and perhaps the public's not entirely behind him. You know, he is at an incredibly low ebb at the moment, according to a lot of his friends, and she's performing a very important duty of sort of looking after him and keeping an eye on him. And, you know, yeah, she's, you know, the mother to two of our princesses who we're very fond of and have done nothing wrong. I think she deserves it.
And apparently it was granted to her by our late Queen so that she would be permitted a St George's Chapel, Windsor funeral. So I suppose if it is what our late Queen wanted, then, you know, we should do it.
Yeah, totally. And the Queen had a lot of affection for Fergie. You know, it was widely known that it was Prince Philip who kept her very far away from the royal fold while he was alive. And after he died, the Queen brought her slowly back in more and more and more. And she's going to be buried a mile away, very strategically, 1 mile away from Prince Philip, at the Frogmore Mausoleum. So at least the Queen very wisely, strategically made sure she won't accidentally end up at St George's Chapel, Windsor, where she and Prince Philip are buried.
So she will be a mile away from Prince Philip. I quite like that little touch.
At arm's length, which is where he likes her, or where he liked her when he was alive.
Quite. To be honest with you, I don't see that changing. And there are some interesting things that have come out about Prince Harry as well, and him supposedly cutting a Crown actor out of his life and out of his friend group. What's gone on here?
Yeah, so Dominic West, who plays Prince Charles in The Crown, in the current series of The Crown, went on an expedition with Prince Harry to the South Pole back in 2014. So 2 years before he met Meghan. And Dominic West sort of bigged him up in a press conference at the time and said, oh, he was so great. He was this amazing guy to have around. And when we finished, we had a 2-day bender and we drank champagne through a prosthetic limb because it was for walking with the wounded. And Harry took great offence to this. But the hilarious thing is that Dominic West was bigging up Harry and portraying him as this great Jack the Lad, one of the team. But just in there sort of slipped into two moments that maybe Harry wouldn't think, you know, was perfect for his PR, which is that he had a 2-day bender and he drank champagne for a prosthetic limb. But Harry completely cut off Dominic West. And what's so interesting about this is we know Harry now has a habit of cutting people off, and he has done ever since he met Meghan. But this was 2 years before he met her. And he completely and utterly cut off Dominic West. And then more importantly, cut off anyone around Dominic West who he knew, any mutual friends. So it was complete paranoia, and I think a really over-the-top reaction.
Yeah, I mean, ironically, the idea of Prince Harry going on a 2-day bender and drinking champagne out of a prosthetic leg is probably very good for his PR.
Yeah, it was really good for his PR, and that's why Dominic West mentioned it, because he was, at the time, Harry's image was all about, remember, we loved him being the fun joker, the joker of the pack, the laid-back, cool army guy. And it was actually really good. The whole nation was behind him.
Yeah.
The new Harry that cuts people off, gets offended, doesn't do anything wrong, you know, we're not so fond of. So I think Dominic West did him a favour.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Look, thank you very, very much, Charlotte. Short and sweet, but we'll chat again very soon. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas, by the way, and I hope to see you again very, very soon. That's Charlotte Griffiths there, editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday, very plugged in when it comes to all things royal. Loads of stuff in the inbox, especially about those hospital car parking charges. So I'm going to go to those when I come back, gbviews at gbnews.com. But look, unbelievable, someone says that a junior doctor thinks that ordinary people should pay these extortionate car parking charges, says John. Yeah, I know. But look, I've got loads coming away in the next hour. We are going to be doing a little game of GB News presenter Guess Who as well. So we are showing you children's pictures of GB News presenters to see whether or not you can guess who indeed any of them actually are. So GB News presenters as kids. I am going to be asking as well about the Labour Party. They're drawing up alternatives to the government's Rwanda plan. But can you really trust Sir Keir Starmer? And Ricky Gervais has now turned the migrant crisis into an absolute laughingstock. More of that in a sec.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. It stays wet and windy over the next 24 hours, but not as wet or as windy. The rain turns more showery and the hill snow in the far north also eases, but low pressure stays with us. Storm Gerrit was named because of the very treacherous conditions we've seen across northern Scotland during the last 12 to 18 hours. And there will continue to be some heavy rain and hill snow across the Northern Isles, along with 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts for a time overnight. Elsewhere across the country, it stays windy. The rain turns to showers, and the bulk of these showers will be in the west, with some clear spells further east. But with a blustery feel overnight, it's not going to be a particularly chilly start to Thursday. Having said that, it stays cold across Scotland, with further hill snow expected into the day on Thursday, outbreaks of rain at lower levels, and certainly plenty of showers or longer spells of rain elsewhere across the country. The spells of rain will be interspersed by brighter intervals, and it's not going to be quite as windy as it has been during the last 24 hours, with wind gusts of 40 to 50 miles an hour. 12 Celsius in the south, 5 to 8 further north, so staying chilly across Scotland. And Friday starts off bright in many places, particularly towards central and southeastern parts of the country, but there'll be further cloud and outbreaks of rain elsewhere. Again, hill snow or even snow to lower levels across northern Scotland and into the weekend. Some heavy hill snow in the north, whilst elsewhere we'll see wet and windy weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Very good evening, it's 10 p.m. and this is Patrick Christys Tonight.
Well, I am woke now and I can prove it. Here you go. I love illegal immigrants.
Yep, the migrant crisis is now a complete and utter laughingstock, but it is crystal clear that Keir Starmer has absolutely no plan whatsoever. Do you think that Labour actually want to stop the boats? We are the first G20 nation to halve our carbon emissions. London Mayor Sadiq Khan stands accused of employing heavies and goons to guard ULEZ cameras. At what point do we just say, enough is enough? We've done our bit for the climate. Stanley Johnson debates Neil Hamilton in an epic head-to-head shortly. I will have all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages tonight to keep you ahead of the game, and we'll be playing Guess Who with GB News presenters and their childhood photos, like this one. Yeah, got dark quick that, didn't it? That is, back in the day, a GB News presenter reenacting the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Well, hey, nothing screams Christmas like that. Who do you think that is, though? On my panel, I've got Christine Hamilton, Adam Brooks and Matthew Larzer, who are all enjoying the cakes that we have dutifully provided for them. Email me now. Do you think that Labour wants to stop illegal immigration? gbviews@gbnews.com. Stay tuned. Lively hour coming your way. Like I said, do you reckon that Keir Starmer actually wants to stop the boats? When we come back, I'll be talking about his latest non-policy. GBViews at gbnews.com. Headlines now.
Patrick, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, Storm Gerrit hit the UK today, leaving homes without power and drivers trapped in their cars as snow, wind and rain caused flooding and closed roads. Police Scotland declared a major incident in the Highlands as snow brought cars to a standstill on the A9 to Aviemore, and 27,000 homes in northern Scotland had their power cut off. Local energy company SSEN said they restored power to about 8,000 homes. They're still currently working hard to reconnect the rest. And on the railways, passengers on the East Coast Main Line between London and Scotland were told not to travel. And at airports, thousands of travellers experienced delays as flights were grounded. Multiple weather warnings remain in place across the rest of the UK, but northern Scotland is the most badly hit. And today, ferry passengers were facing delays of up to 3 hours at the port of Dover due to French police going sick. And there was increased demand as well as people tried to get away for a post-Christmas trip. There are no queues now. Officials are saying border checks are taking around 5 to 10 minutes. The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, announced the spring budget will be announced on the 6th of March next year. Reports are also suggesting Downing Street could axe inheritance tax and reduce income tax. Sir Keir Starmer has seemingly instructed his front bench team to finalise their manifesto plans, telling shadow ministers to have their proposals ready by mid-January. Now, there were 0 migrant crossings over the Christmas period for the first time since current records began. The Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, tweeting that in the last hour, saying no crossings took place across the English Channel on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day or Boxing Day this year. That's the first time since 2018. It means there have now been 10 consecutive days without any arrivals recorded, with poor weather conditions being a contributory factor. Now, in France, the former president of the European Commission and the architect of the euro, Jacques Delors, has died at the age of 98. Monsieur Delors was a leading figure on the French political left during the 1980s and was perhaps best known in Britain for his feisty relationship with the then Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher. France's President, Emmanuel Macron, has today honoured his fellow politician, saying he'd been a tireless architect of our Europe. And the number of people shopping in high street sales across the UK was down on Boxing Day by more than 20%. Figures from the MRA software company said that footfall was up before 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but significantly lower across the day as a whole. The group said the only location to experience an overall rise in footfall was central London. That's the news on GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker. This is Britain's news channel.
It is now crystal clear that Keir Starmer does not have a plan to tackle illegal immigration. The only thing he knows for sure is that he'd scrap the Rwanda scheme. That's the only plan. Scrap the only thing that might just about act as a deterrent. Today's line is that he's considering offshore processing, but they haven't made any progress with that yet. In fact, they're looking at, quote, any plan that works. Well, their job should be to come up with a plan that works, shouldn't it? He's had years to do this, and now we are months away from a general election. In a weird twist, the Labour Party actually denied reports in the Times that they have any detailed plans. So that's where we are now, is it? Labour flirting with the EU over a migrant quota that could see us take more illegal immigrants than we do now. Labour saying they'll scrap Rwanda. Labour saying they might process people offshore. Labour saying they'll process claims quicker, but not really telling us how. Labour saying they'll smash the gangs, but not really telling us how. And Labour now denying that they've got any detailed plan. Labour is reportedly thinking of allowing people to apply for refugee status before they get to the UK, so they don't have to take a trip across the Channel. Surely that just gives them 2 bites at the Great British Cherry. There is basically no point saying that they'll process claims quicker, because that's another way of saying that they'll just wave people through, in my view. And when it comes to offshore processing, just look at the immediate reaction now from the radical left-wing Momentum Brigade. They said that Starmer's plans would be, quotes, disturbing and, quotes, instead of aping inhumane Tory policies like offshoring asylum seekers, Keir Starmer should be standing up for progressive values and migrants' rights. Now, if Starmer tries to implement any of this, he will get massive pushback from the left of his party. So much so that I don't honestly see him putting any of this in his manifesto ahead of the election. Every single person can see how ridiculous the migrant crisis is. Ricky Gervais took the mickey big time in his latest stand-up set. And when you hear the laughter in this clip, you will realise that ordinary people have genuinely had enough of this. It is just a small fringe group of very loud radicals who don't think like the rest of us. I think we can play a Ricky Gervais clip at some point soon. If Starmer tries to implement any of this, he will get massive pushback from the left of the party. So much so, I really don't see any of this actually coming to fruition. Certainly not anytime soon. People who don't want to take radical action on the migrant crisis should be treated, I think, like a complete and utter laughingstock that they really are. The Conservatives have let this crisis happen on their watch. They have allowed Britain to become El Dorado for illegal immigrants and illegal migration mecca. They do deserve an absolute kicking for that. But seriously, though, Labour appears to have absolutely no plan at all. And any plan they do have will receive massive pushback from their base. I don't think Starmer wants that kind of controversy, and that makes me wonder, does Keir Starmer actually want to stop the boats? But to respond to all of this now, I'm joined again by broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton, pub owner and landlord Adam Brooks, and former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larzer. Christine, do you think Keir Starmer actually really does want to stop the boats?
Well, if he's got any sense, he'll want to try and stop the boats because it's what people want him to do. It may not be people's number one concern, which tends to be economic issues, but as the election approaches, he's got to come up. It's been very easy for Starmer hitherto. He doesn't have to put his money where his mouth is, but as the election approaches, he's going to have to come up with positive plans for all these various issues. And if he doesn't come up with something that convinces people, which... To me, what he needs to come up and do is saying we're going to get out of the ECHR, etc., etc. If we don't divorce ourselves from all these European institutions, we haven't got a hope in hell of controlling.
Let's just take
He's not going to do that.
Let's just take this Ricky Gervais clip. So Ricky Gervais was doing his stand-up routine. It's available online, of course, and this was a big part of it, him teeing off on the illegal migration lunacy.
Well, I am woke now, and I can prove it. Here you go. I love illegal immigrants. Yeah, sue me now. Sometimes I go down to Dover for the day, right? And I look out, right? And look for a boat, and I see a dinghy with about 60 of them, and I go over here, like, right? And I pull them into shore, and I go, women and children first. They go, there are no women and children. Just you lads, is it? Just come on, lads. Come on, lads. If I go down there one day and there's no boat, I am absolutely gutted. I just sort of wander into town and I stand by the traffic lights and I wait for a big lorry to pull up, right? And I look underneath and there's a lad sort of clutching like that. And I go, where you headed? And he goes, Gary Lineker's house. I go, it's just down there.
Matthew, that's the reality. The vast majority of people think that the illegal migration crisis is a complete and utter laughingstock. But Keir Starmer doesn't have a plan, does he?
No, he absolutely has a plan.
What is the plan?
Well, the plan is to smash the gangs by a new cross-border police force and using terrorism legislation, which the Tories have ample opportunity to do, and they've refused to do it. So that you can use the anti-terror laws, which means to give the police extra powers and the courts extra powers. And
Who's police?
What is the new border force going to do that the current one doesn't do?
It's not the border. It's not a border force. It's a police force to work together in Europe to smash the gangs at source, which there has been. You know, some European countries have had success, and it's to be part of that. It's also to process the complaints. You say that processing the claims. The people who failed on this, the people who don't have a plan, are the Tories. The Tories have let the claims pile up, and you say that it doesn't matter whether they're processed. I couldn't disagree more because if we saw the other day,
the fact is, under the current laws, anyone can come here and stay. Basically, so when he says when he says he's going to process people, we can't deport anyone anywhere at the the moment.
We do deport some people. We don't,
some?
Yes.
Very few.
Less than 1%.
No, less than 1% having processed in the last year.
We decide that people can't stay, and then we don't bother to find them and send them home. They just
exactly,
disappear
and
into the ether.
enforcement is very important. Can I just say on this offshore processing thing, though, because just to respond directly to that. I mean, first of all, he doesn't listen to what Momentum's saying. Momentum are finished, which is the Corbynite ginger group. Like Jeremy Corbyn, they should retire gracefully from the scene. What he suggested or has been suggested, is that there are ways you can process people offshore which are going to be respected by British courts. The problem with the Rwanda plan is we are basically going to send people to Rwanda and be processed there.
Where did you say that was going to happen, Matthew?
Well, one of the places it might happen is Albania. It could happen in Tunisia. It could happen in Morocco.
Tunisia has got significant human rights issues.
Yes, but their people wouldn't be done by the Tunisian judges. They'd be done by British judges, Adam.
Again.
That's the difference, Adam. In the Rwanda plan, it's saying we shunt everybody to Rwanda and they go under Rwandan jurisdiction. Under the European plan,
under the observation of an international cohort of people.
Yeah.
So it's not just Rwandan judges. The fact is, what we're going to end up seeing, right, is Labour proposing a policy and everyone going along with it because it's Labour and it must be kind and fair, whereas the Tories do anything and they're going to get...
Well, I mean, maybe only Labour will get away with it, but the difference is it won't be the Rwanda plan because just like the Italians are going to do, the Italians have got to deal with Albania, Italians are going to process claims in Albania, but it will be done by an Italian judge under Italian law.
I'll tell you what Labour will end up doing. This is my opinion, and I think most people would agree. The hundreds of thousands that are waiting for their asylum applications to be looked at will end up be given a pass by Labour, an amnesty. These people who we do not know who they are, there's terrorists, there's rapists, there's murders. We do not know any of these people.
Would you want me to put
Labour will end up letting them just stay here.
No.
They're never going to deport people. As you say, Momentum might be finished, but they've got a lot of power still within the Labour Party.
No, they don't.
And the far left are not going to allow the optics of the Labour Party deporting people from this country.
The latest line out of the Labour Party that came today was that they do not have a detailed plan.
No, no. What they said is that the stories that we saw on Christmas Day, which are about offshore processing centres, were not Labour policy. Labour does have a detailed plan. There's a nice graphic that you can about the 5-point plan.
Just said that they were going to have offshore processing.
This is what
in Tunisia.
This is what the discussion that is going on. The leadership haven't committed to it yet. What has been reported, why it would be different to Rwanda. The key phrase in it is watertight, because at the moment, let's remind ourselves, because the Tories can't write a plan on the back of an envelope, we haven't sent a single asylum seekers in process ashore. Not one person.
Not one person. That's because the lefties keep stopping it. Labour.
I wouldn't call the Supreme Court a bunch of lefties, Adam.
We're still hipped into these ridiculous European organisations. They're the ones that are stopping it.
Well, it's been stopped by British judges in British courts.
Look, I'm no fan of this government, and they've messed up royally. But Labour are going to make it 10 times worse. It doesn't mean that you've got to vote for the Tories, but I couldn't vote for either of them. Labour is going to be a disaster for illegal immigration.
No, Labour's going to smash the gangs, process the claims.
This smash the gangs thing. He says this week in, week out, smash the gangs.
Yeah, we're not in power, so we haven't been able to do it.
It's obviously a Labour soundbite that we're going to hear for months on end.
It's a Labour policy.
Smash the gangs. What a load of nonsense.
You don't want that to happen, Adam.
You couldn't smash a load of plates, let alone gangs.
Oh, Adam, that's just a bit... I mean,
does that Labour policy not require foreign police forces to do their job? A little bit like the amount of money we're paying the French to not...
Certainly, what you'd see is we wouldn't be taken for a ride like this government's been taken for a ride by the French. Well, because it would be an integrated police force and it would involve countries across Europe, including the Italians and the Germans, to smash the gangs at source. Look, when the people get on the small boats, it's a failure for everybody. We want to stop people getting there so that they're not coming across on small boats, so we don't have to process them, and we don't have to waste the millions the Tories have spent on hotel accommodation.
But as I understand, isn't part of the Labour plan that we will accept there'll be some sort of pooling arrangement of these immigration people all over Europe, and we will have to accept hundreds of millions of them.
No, it wouldn't be hundreds of millions. It would be fewer than we get at the moment. But that's what that was.
Not hundreds of
hundreds of thousands. Yeah. No, I mean, you know, in an ideal world, what you might get to the stage is where you actually had a controlled flow. At the moment, Adam, I agree with you to the extent that we don't know who's coming in, we don't know what's happening because the Tories have lost 15,000 people.
But the left are facilitating this. They keep going against all the plans like Rwanda. Rwanda is not the answer. But if I'm giving a gangster $6,000 to get me on a dinghy to get over to the UK, and I know there's maybe a 1 in 3 chance that I'm going to end up 6,500 miles away in Rwanda.
Under Labour, you're never going to get any further than Tunisia.
Probably wouldn't.
But that's not
wouldn't
true,
risk that.
Yes,
you know?
because this is what Europe as a whole is
true.
moving towards offshore processing. The Italians are already doing it in Albania. The Germans and the EU as a whole are looking at doing it in Tunisia and Morocco.
So you honestly
what
believe that the bloke whose party, you know, is at the whims of the left in this country...
He's not at the whims of the left.
And
He's a strong and
regularly parrots things from Amnesty International, took money from Just Stop Oil. Just Stop Oil, who...
He didn't take money from Just Stop Oil. He took money from the man who also gives money to Just Stop Oil.
OK, chicken and egg situation.
Who's now abandoned Just Stop Oil.
That group who actually tried to block people getting on the Bibby Stockholm barge. You're telling me that we can all sleep easy at night in the belief that he's going to do things like...
Yes, because the plan is to smash the gangs, stop people getting here, stop people coming across the small boats, process the claims that we have here. It's not going to be a magic wand, but it is going to be a plan. We've got a government
who wanted
to
stop people like vile criminals getting on a deportation flight to Jamaica. That's the man who we can trust to smash.
He spent his career as Britain's prosecutor, prosecuting terrorists,
and he failed at that job.
Terrorism. Well, I don't.
He failed as the head of the CPS. He was a failure. And as Patrick just said, I was going to say the same thing. Keir Starmer and Labour try and stop all these deportation flights. They've allowed rapists to come back and rape again. They are weak. Labour are a joke on immigration.
I'm not sure there's any evidence.
There is a lot of evidence with that.
What I think Adam's referring to there is that letter that was signed, wasn't there, from a load of people saying that the deportation flight should stop.
A few Labour MPs objected to the deportation flights. They didn't. It wasn't leadership that objected.
And it's led to rapists raping again.
He did sign.
And Yvette Cooper's going to be Home Secretary. I mean, what we need is we need less theatre and we need a plan that works. The Tories have spent 250 million quid on Rwanda. It hasn't worked.
But Labour, as it currently stands, are not telling us exactly what that plan is.
Yes, we are. Which is to stop that. Which is to smash the gangs.
Smash the gangs.
But I would like to see it. I would like to see a cross-border police force. You can grow, but wouldn't you want to see terrorism legislation used against these awful criminal gangs for exploiting people and dumping people?
The left is indirectly supporting these people smugglers now. There is no way you're going to stop it.
Smash the gangs, to me, is exactly... You keep hearing this phrase, smash the gangs, smash the gangs. It's like Rishi Sunak saying, I'll do whatever it takes, I'll do whatever it takes. It's just sound like...
Right, we're drawing a line under that now. Spirited stuff to start the hour, but... In sharp contrast, how well do you know our fantastic cast of GB News presenters? We've been playing a little Christmas game here, so we thought we would show you the next picture. Who is this angelic GB News star that you can see on your screen there? We'll be unveiling the results of all of this very, very soon. Some fantastic guests in the inbox. But first, the UK is hailed as a world leader in tackling climate change after we became the first G20 nation to halve carbon emissions. But have we now done enough? And should other countries start pulling their weight? Environmentalist Stanley Johnson takes on UKIP leader Neil Hamilton in what promises to be a cracking debate. Don't move.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Well, Britain has become one of the first major countries to halve its carbon emissions. That's according to new data released this week. The rapid pace of UK environmental progress means that our output is now below 320 million tonnes, less than half of the 652 million tonnes of our 1970s peak when it comes to CO2. This is in spite of Britain now having a far larger population than 50 years ago and an economy more than twice the size. And I really don't think that can be understated. With such great news, though, do we now need to continue supporting green energy plans? This comes as Sadiq Khan has reportedly hired masked people to guard ULEZ cameras, OK? So is this now a step too far? Is it time to say enough is enough? Joining me now to discuss this is environmental campaigner, former MEP Stanley Johnson, and leader of UKIP, Neil Hamilton. Chaps, thank you very, very much. Neil, I'll start with you. Do we have to say enough is enough now? Britain has done her bit when it comes to the climate crisis.
Well, we should have said enough is enough a very long time ago. You know, Britain produces less than 1% of all the world's CO2 emissions. And even if you think that CO2 emissions matter, it's China and India and the United States who produce over half the global total. So if anybody's going to have to make sacrifices, it should be them. We've actually made our contribution by closing down all our heavy industries, coal, steel, glass making, aluminium, etc., which has all been shipped off to China, where they couldn't care a damn about global warming. They make, honeyed words at things like COP26 and so on. But actually, their global emissions go up year by year by year, and they're actually building around the world 250 coal-fired power stations as we speak.
Stanley, I'll bring you in now. Look, enough is enough, Stanley. We've done our bit. We've suffered the pain of green levies and taxes and all of this stuff. We've halved our emissions. Job done. That's enough, Stanley.
Well, I don't think we have halved our emissions. I think that's a lot of wishful thinking. We are committed to a certain target. We're committed to two targets. One, a target for 2050, which is a net zero target. On the way to 2050, we're committed by the end of this decade to a 68% reduction on our 1990 emissions. Now, the Climate Change Committee said we are very worried about the way Britain is going, and frankly, I think this is not a cause for saying, give it up. On the contrary, I say this is the moment for doubling down. And I think I disagree, much as I love talking to Neil, I disagree with pretty much everything he said. And on this day, when Jacques Delors has died, I just want to say, to talk of Britain as being just 1%, don't forget, we are part of this bloc, this European bloc, which taken together is far more than 1%. There's no good saying we're only 1%. The whole European
Is that not the bloc we voted to leave, Stanley?
Exactly. There's no point pretending we don't count because we're only 1%. We count because of the influence we can bear on our neighbours in the world as a whole, and we've had a very good influence. So I can tell you, you may think I should, I would say this, wouldn't I, being as it were the son of a former prime minister? But actually, that commitment, which was made in 2020 by Boris Johnson's government to have this 68% reduction by the end of this decade was crucial. Now, we've got to get there. We absolutely will get there. I was in Dubai, and I say there's huge progress out there. And on the China front, as I told you last time we met, Patrick, I've just spent 8 weeks in China. I can tell you there is a revolution coming down the road in terms of the commitment to renewable energy and the peaking of coal-fired plants and coal emissions.
Neil, come back to that.
Look, you could wipe out the entire British economy, wipe out the entire British population, and China would make up for the reduction in carbon emissions that would produce in a matter of months. And that is exactly what's happening in China. And if China's so committed to green energy, why are they building 250 coal-fired power stations in China and around the world? They're exporting their coal power generation to other parts of the world as part of their Belt and Road Initiative. The reality is that nothing that we do as human beings is going to have that much difference to climate change because it's caused by factors that are way beyond our control. I mean, there is no observable record of correlation between the rise in CO2 emissions, which has taken place in the last 50 to 100 years, and global changes in temperature. We've had periods where the temperature rises, where the temperature falls, where the temperature stays the same. We just had 20 years where there was an absolute pause in global warming. Nobody's been able to explain that.
All right, Stanley, go on.
Neil, love you, but you've been spouting this stuff as long as I have known you. And I can tell you, I was one of the first people to go to the original IPCC panel meeting, which was in October 1986, it might have been November, in Geneva. They got it right then. The IPCC has got it right now. The world is moving in the right direction. This government is moving in the right direction.
I've got to be honest with you, right? If we are having to employ masked goons to guard ULEZ cameras because ordinary people are saying they cannot afford to pay the ULEZ charge, and they see that we have now halved our CO2 emissions, the first G20 country to do it, so the people don't want this, Stanley. Maybe you can afford all the green levies and all of it that comes with it, but Joe Bloggs can't, and why should they have to pay?
Come on, let's pin this one down. We have not halved our CO2 emission. We are not even properly on the way to that 68% reduction on 1990 levels, which is promised by the end of the decade. Yes, we've made a start on ULEZ. That is a different matter because we're not talking there about CO2. We're talking about particulates. We're talking about PM25s. These are things which people are worried about, and I think we need them. And by the way, I think that air pollution is just as important in any form. CO2 obviously has climate change and worldwide effect. We've got to get that.
Neil, I just don't think the average person on the street gives a toss about whether or not a politician can stand up and say, we are now a world leader. What they care about is their bank account and whether or not they feel as
I can tell you something. You have to
I think once you attach the price tag to these airy-fairy ideas, people's view changes very rapidly indeed. What we've been witnessing as a result of all the green taxes and charges that have been imposed in order to pay for uneconomic wind farms and farms of solar panels, etc., is the biggest transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich in my lifetime. We could cut our electricity bills by 25% if we got rid of the taxes and charges that the government imposes upon us. And who are the beneficiaries of all this? It's multi-millionaire developers of wind farms, most of whom are foreign companies, by the way. And in the process, they've been wrecking our countryside. They're massively damaging to wildlife as well, bats and birds and so on. And who's benefiting at the end of the day? It isn't your ordinary man in the street. Quite the opposite. They're the ones who are suffering. And it's really regressive. The people who are suffering most are the poorest.
Look, Stanley, I'm going to just change tack a little bit here, right? And because we have been doing something where we've been asking people to guess some GB News stars from their baby pictures, right? And there's one that I'm wondering whether or not you may have a special interest in here. I think we can bring up a picture. There we go. Do we know who that is? Does anyone have any idea? Anyone here out of the three of us having this discussion right now, does anyone have any idea who this is?
Looks suspiciously like Boris to me.
I think I recognise the jacket in the background.
So that is Boris, then, is it?
I think I do. I've no idea where that came from. How nice of you. Well, all I can say is his line on global warming is good. It needs to be supported. And Neil, just one point on what you were saying. Yes, you're right to talk about the super rich. Look at that figure which Oxfam came up with the other day. 1% of the world's population produces 16% of the carbon emissions. Think about that. That's an important point.
OK, all right, both of you, thank you very, very much. It was a proper debate. You love to see it. Now, we have got tomorrow's front pages coming in. They are flying in just in time for the liveliest pay-per-view anywhere on telly. My panel of news hounds will help me comb through the headlines so you will be ahead of the game. Some corkers on the front pages. Don't miss them.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Let's bring you tomorrow's news tonight now in the liveliest pay-per-view anywhere on telly. The first front pages have just been delivered for my press pack. OK, so we go in with the eye first. Homes bought up for axed HS2 rail line are rented out for millions. HS2 collects £9 million a year from renting out hundreds of homes that people were forced to sell. That is an absolute scandal. Absolute scandal. Daily Star now. Storm Gerrit chaos. Gridlock. Carnage, they say. Storm Gerrit raged across Britain. It did not rage across Britain. Storm Gerrit was absolutely fine. It was a bit of wind and a bit of rain, and lo and behold, Britain ground to a halt because of that. The Mirror. Oh, here we go. Rishi helps the rich get richer. PM's pre-election inheritance tax cut for millionaires. So predictable, isn't it? Same old out-of-touch Tories, they say. Look, it's inheritance tax. It's a death tax. I think he's right to scrap it. The Guardian. Domestic abuse survivors have lost trust in us. Met. So this is from the Met Police. Victims of domestic abuse have lost confidence in Britain's biggest police force after a series of scandals. It goes on to rattle off a list of said scandals which have fundamentally let women down, which is terrible. The Times, Labour will promise big expansion on childcare. Nursery places in primaries to be offered. The Labour Party is drawing up plans to create thousands of nursery places for the under-5s as part of an offer to working parents before the next general election. Can I zone in on the eye, please, before we go into our presenters' Guess Who's of the baby pictures? HS2, people had things compulsory purchased or were basically forced to sell because they were in the catchment zone. Now HS2 isn't happening. People have lost out on potentially millions of pounds there, and to see that those new purchasers are going to rent out those things, that actually, I think, should be a crime.
Can you imagine your family home and you had to let it go because of HS2, and then there's suddenly a load of nobodies in your house?
Right.
That's an insult.
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't agree more. If it was me or any of us personally, you would be horrified. On the other hand, at least they're trying to get a bit of the money back.
But where's it going?
Well,
I mean, it's
I
going to
don't know. It says HS2. HS2.
It'll go to help build the existing
But
line.
HS2 isn't an entity in its own right. Presumably, it's coming back to the government.
There's a company.
So, bit of context, right? Bit of context.
Who is getting
Loads
money?
of brownfield site in Manchester, right, was bought up by companies with billions in the bank, OK? Under the pretence that this was going to be used for HS2. So now it's not. They just own these sites. These are massive warehouses. These are huge, huge, huge sites that they now own, and they got a significant reduction in market value if HS2 wasn't happening. They own those sites. They're going to make an absolute killing.
Yeah. Get the planning permission get planning permission for houses, and they're exactly in for a massive.
And there's a big issue as well about whether the government is going to sell off some of the land that it owns that is crucial for HS2, which would stop a Labour government doing bringing HS2 back or doing something similar.
Really?
So that's the big debate about whether they're going to. That's more land rather than the houses. That's sort of some of the land rights they acquired.
So apparently 710 properties bought for Phase 2, which was connecting Birmingham to Manchester, are now on the rental market in Staffordshire, Cheshire and Derbyshire. Homeowners forced to sell are absolutely outraged to see rental of former homes. What, practically speaking, what can happen here now? What should happen here now? Do these homeowners get compensated?
So they've had their houses bought off them, but at the set rate, and now they're seeing people in them, rather than being demolished to make way for a railway, which was the purpose of the original.
They should be given an option to have the houses back.
Yeah.
Do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, why
They've
not?
probably spent some of the money. They've probably bought other properties.
Well, I know.
I do wonder if anyone should be given, if anyone who's had to sell sites should be given the opportunity to buy it back for what they sold it for.
But let's just have some context for the money. 9 million a year from renting out hundreds of homes. That might just house migrants in hotels for a day.
Yes, I know, it's peanuts.
OK, so it's peanuts.
While we're on the eye, can we move to a little story just on the right?
Yeah.
Cheers! We can now buy pints of wine at last. We're bringing back pints. Are you
a fan of a pint of wine?
So this is not a pint of champagne.
I'm a pub owner, and that's like, what is that going to gain me?
What
sort of good news is that to people?
So what you've got is, in fact, the only thing they're going to change is, and we all love a mini bottle of. They're going to change the sizes of mini bottles that you can buy booze in. But the main thing is, the metric martyr, and they're going to bring it back. 1% of people in the consultation said they wanted to bring it back, and the main rules are not going to change. So Jacob is of this parish. Jacob Rees-Mogg of this parish is outraged that the Brexit benefit, as he sees it, is not being delivered. This is just a
Let me just tell you, as a publican, it's a load of nonsense.
Exactly.
No one is going to order a pint of wine.
Really?
Excuse me.
I've been known to order much worse, mate.
Exactly.
Not now.
You're
not now.
You're a full character.
That was part of the reason, actually.
It's all about choice, and the way that the pint and all our imperial measures were done away with, just like that, a sweep of a pen. Jack Delois in the news. It's brilliant that people now have the option.
It's a bit of PR for the
Exactly.
Okay,
I agree with Adam now.
But I didn't mean to drop a bomb on the sofa.
Can I just point? All right. Can I just point us gently into the direction of our special Christmas game? Yeah. Let's reveal some GB News presenters, all right, who we got to send in childhood pictures of them and see if you could guess who they are. So shall we do it? All right, we've got a few here. That
Jacob.
Obviously, Jacob Rees-Mogg, right? Shall we go to the next one? Who do we think that is?
Farage.
That is Lewis
Farage.
Schaffer.
It's Nigel Farage. It's Nigel Farage. I think we've already shown a glimpse of this one. Who's the next one here that we've got? Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, obviously.
Bojo.
That's Boris Johnson. Now, who's the next person here? Who do we think that is?
Ooh. That is Mark.
Mark Dolan.
Mark Dolan.
Yes.
It is Mark Dolan. OK.
What? I mean, I'm loving the look. That's very
Now,
trend now.
let's keep this on the screen. So that is somebody being crucified, right?
What an extraordinary photograph to send in.
Being depicted as Jesus Christ being crucified.
I think that's Lee Anderson.
You think that's it? What makes you say that?
I think it looks like a sort of miners' welfare hall.
No, the photo's not old enough for Lee Anderson.
That's him being resurrected.
I think that looks like a kind of miners'
welfare.
welfare.
That was Jesus, aged 10, in 1977.
Oh,
that would work, yeah, I think that's Lee.
That is Lee Anderson.
Oh, wow.
Lee Anderson was Jesus Christ. There we go. Who's
Some would say he still thinks he is, but I love him.
Who's next? Who have we got next? Right, who do we think that is?
Camilla Tominey.
Anyone else?
Camilla.
Yeah, it looks like
It is, of course it is. What you can't see is just off camera there, there's a Labour politician being grilled. Right, who have we got now? Who have we got? There we go.
Nana?
That's Matthew Laza.
It's definitely Nana Okoye. It is Nana Okoye.
It'd be nice knowing you.
We've got one more for you, I think, here. Right. Who's this now in my ear?
Right. Which one?
Is it? I'm just getting something in my ear that has shocked me to the core. So just say that to me again.
We're looking at
We're trying to...
Wow. OK, so it's on the right. You're looking for the one on the right there. All right? In the white...
Tom Harwood?
No. It's Darren Grimes.
Oh, wow.
Darren Grimes. There we go. I think we've got time for one more, have we? Right, OK, now this is going to be a bit harder for people, isn't it? So, I mean, that's impossible, isn't it? Really?
Richard Tice?
What?
Is it a girl? Is it a boy?
How did you get that?
Because the guy next to him's got a right generation, black and white. Richard is a slightly older gent, and the guy next to him in a bow tie, which makes it posh. And Richard Tice is very
You've got a
classy.
proper knack.
You've got a real knack of this. Did someone slip me the answers to this before?
No, absolutely not.
That is the leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice. There we go. I mean, yeah, who'd have thought that? One more. Who do we think that is?
You can see you.
Anyone?
You.
It is.
That is you, yeah.
Yeah, there we go. That's me dressed in my little school uniform, which is shorts and
Obviously liked cake back then.
Love cake. Thank you very much, guys. I think I've just been called a fat bastard by... what you've just done there is you've body-shamed a child, Adam.
Yeah, you basically body-shamed a child, Adam.
Body-shamed a child.
You've shamed on black. You've claimed the entire Labour Party.
That is an insight. Can I just say, that is an insight into what kind of person you were at school. You obviously like cake. Oh, you fatty bum. There you are. OK, one more. Come on, then we'll knock it on the head. One more. Who the heck is that?
Oh, my goodness.
Goodness me.
Hang on wait, that's not a child, for a start. Have we got the wrong picture up here?
Not a child.
It's a very kind of Freddie Mercury-esque pose.
That is... So we asked for childhood pictures.
Yeah.
What is that? Who is that? Do you reckon? Go on, Christine.
I've absolutely no idea who it is.
I'm trying to think who...
It's a man.
Andrew Pearce. It's Andrew Pearce.
It is Andrew Pearce.
Wow.
That is Andrew Pearce at, no doubt, one of his notorious parties. Who have we got here now, then? OK, all right, let's have a look at this. It's the one in the front, obviously, we are guessing. I think you might be able to...
Arlene Foster.
No.
Bev Turner.
It is Bev Turner. It's Andrew Pearce's co-host. Right, OK, that's quite enough of those little baby pictures for you now. I hope that everyone playing along at home did very, very well. So thank you very much for everybody who did. We do have more of them in the next segment, though, so make sure you stay tuned for all of that. But we will also be crowning tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. And, of course, we will be whizzing you through more of tomorrow's front pages tonight. And we'll be rounding off our series of GB News Guess Who for the presenters. So, absolutely no need to go anywhere. It'll be a lively end to the show. I'll see you in a tick.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
All right, it is time now to return to our paper review. More front pages have just been delivered hot off the press. Here we go. So, let's go in with the Daily Telegraph. Travellers told to delay plans amid storm and rail chaos. They are not, I believe, talking about members of the Irish traveller community there. They are indeed talking about people trying to get home from Christmas. Thousands stranded after post-Christmas disruption extends to road, sea and air. It happens every year. It's compounded by strikes and compounded by, bear in mind you're talking to somebody here who drove from Manchester to London today, a bit of rain. That was what that was. It was a bit of rain. They are also talking about fix dire justice system to make sentence revamp work. Sparing criminals jail sentences will not stop reoffending. That's on the front of the Telegraph. We go to the Daily Mail. Yes, we do. Hunt plans to slash death tax by half. So this is about the Tory tax cut. So Jeremy Hunt is considering radical plans to cut inheritance tax. The Tory party has been considering inheritance tax for about 13 years.
The tax is wrong. I worked my whole life for my children, and I don't want them to be taxed on everything I've done.
Let's focus in on this now. Come on then, guys. So go on, Adam. You think that cutting inheritance tax is a good thing?
Everything I do in my life is with my children in my mind. You know, I want them to have the best start in life. If suddenly I go tomorrow, I want them to have the easiest life that possibly my hard work can give them. And I think inheritance tax is a disgrace and it should be abolished, not just half.
Oh, go on, Matthew. Have you got a different...
So, look, I mean, both my parents died, so I paid inheritance tax on my dad's estate. The Tories changed it so that your children can inherit the family home up to kind of what's basically the average house of a family home.
It's about 400 grand.
Yeah, so you add an extra 250 grand onto the thing. So I didn't pay it when my mum died. And I think that you have to set it at a sensible level. At the moment, it affects only 5 to 7% of estate. So I think that, yeah, it's fine. It's decent you should be able to pass something on to your kids, but for very, you know, those with the biggest shoulders should take their fair share of the burden. So it's about getting the level right for me.
Well, the Tories' problem is that because it only affects, is it 5%? I thought it was 4.5%. Anyway, 5. Small number of people. The perception is that this is something that only the rich pay.
That's on the front of the mirror
That's not the problem. That is the Tories' concern.
Yeah, absolutely. That's their political danger.
But it affects a lot of their core supporters.
Totally.
And if they don't keep their core supporters, they really are doomed.
It's
and
people...
it doesn't affect inflation.
Yeah, but you can't say that everyone that pays inheritance tax is rich.
No, you can't, but that is how it's perceived.
Well, the truth of the matter is that they are. I mean, it is the top 5%.
They are the top 5%.
The top 5% of people who leave it, and
they are rich.
At the moment, the truth of the matter is we've had so many tax rises under this Tory government. We need to get tax down on working families first.
Well, there was a lot of pushback from actually Tory MPs saying that they do want to just get things like income tax and national insurance down.
It's dragging people into pay high rate tax is more of a worry for me.
Yeah, I can see both sides of it. Personally, I would scrap inheritance tax. I'd basically reduce all tax, but you know, that's just me. We did have a Prime Minister that tried that once, and didn't end that well, did it? But look, let's just
ended quickly.
Yeah, well, yeah. I've just asked the lettuce, but we've got time for just a couple more GB News presenters' photos.
Oh,
and
yes.
We've got Union Jackass and Greatest Britain. So let's go. So bring them up. Who have we got here? So who is this? Who is this cowboy? Anybody?
That might be Tom Harwood because it's the right. I'm looking at the age.
Because you've seen him in that costume before.
I haven't. I've seen him in a cowboy uniform, but not of that vintage. I jest.
Anyone?
It looks quite. I think it's somebody who's on the old side.
Stephen Dixon.
Oh, it's Stephen
Wrong. Dixon.
Wrong.
There we go.
Wrong.
OK. We'll do one more, and then we'll get into Greatest Britain Union Jackass. Who is that?
Screaming who that is.
Go on.
Arlene.
Arlene, you're going for Arlene?
Yeah, it just is Arlene, isn't it? Yeah, must be.
You can see the eyes.
It is Arlene.
Yeah, it must be. Look.
It is. It is. Yes. Well done, everybody. Right. OK. Quickly. We've got two more, I believe, that we have to do because apparently they're watching and they need to find out whether they've.
I hope they're all watching.
So go on. Let's do it. Yep. Let's go for them. Come on. Let's go quickly. Any time now would be absolutely bloody lovely. Right, there we go.
Portillo.
Right.
Portillo.
Michael Portillo. Looking exactly like Michael Portillo.
Yeah.
OK, who's this one? Now...
Oh, that's impossible.
Is it impossible? Because you've been very good at guessing them all so far. So, very quickly, anybody is going...
Male or female?
It's male.
Male.
He is a...
Alistair Stewart.
Alistair Stewart.
Oh, yes.
There we go. All right, OK. That's enough for now, because we've just about got time for our Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Brilliant. OK, Christine, Greatest Britain?
Well, my Greatest Britain is Lady Carnarvon, the Chatelaine of Downton Abbey, otherwise Highclere Castle, because she has said enough is enough with all this ridiculous rewilding. We need to plant food, to grow, to feed ourselves. None of this rewilding stuff. She said we cannot go on importing food from the other side of the world. We need to encourage people to grow food, to be self-sufficient. So
all right.
Good for her.
OK.
Mine is an honorary nomination, and sadly he died on Christmas Day. His name is Bill Granger, Australian restaurateur who owned the Granger & Co chain. Legend of hospitality.
He's the one who brought avocado and toast, am I right?
He was my alternative. You got there first, so I'm with you on that one.
Matthew.
Mine's Claire Balding for having the National Treasure, Claire Balding, having the courage to speak out about inequality in broadcasting, which she believes has led to our screens being too full of overpaid average men and underrepresenting women. Obviously, I exclude the male talent on show here.
Claire, that was a bit close to home, that for me, Claire, I'll be honest. But there we go. Normally I decide these before the show, but I didn't today, so I'm just going to wing it. And I'll go for Christine's nomination. There we go. So Christine's...
She deserves support for making a stand.
All right, OK. It was a tough one, though. I arguably should have gone for that Aussie chef. But, right, so who's your Union Jackass, Christine?
Oh, my goodness me. Well, it's Rishi Sunak for that toe-curling video. I know it's Christmas and it's time for a bit of fun and this, that and the other, but he's the Prime Minister, for heaven's sake. He's about to slide off the other side of the world. Did he really need to do all this? I hope we've got a clear...
He did a Christmas video.
Rather
yes, he did,
creepy
indeed.
video.
Am I the only one here?
Quite like it.
Shouldn't he be going in the country and smashing the gangs?
My Union Jackass is parents who encourage or tell their children to change gender.
Yeah, strong. Right, Matthew.
Mine's W.H. Smiths, who are trialling a very rather peculiar rebrand as WHS with a logo that now looks like the NHS and is confusing people.
Oh, my God.
That's, it's one of those for the bin.
It is one of the for the bin, actually. Anyway, right, the winner is Adam Brooks' nomination, which is, of course, Parents. Oh, no, it's not Rishi Sunak, but there we go. I'm going to overrule that. I'm going to go for Adam Brooks' nomination.
Christmas chaos.
I'm going to claim...
Thank you very much for a thoroughly entertaining evening. I hope you've loved it at home, or if you're in your car or wherever you are. Thank you to my panel. It's Headliners next. I'll be back tomorrow at 9 p.m. for another rip-roaring affair. Mwah.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. It stays wet and windy over the next 24 hours, but not as wet or as windy. The rain turns more showery and the hill snow
in the far north also eases, but low pressure stays with us. Storm Gerrit was named because of the very treacherous conditions we've seen across northern Scotland during the last 12 to 18 hours, and there will continue to be some heavy rain and hill snow across the Northern Isles, along with 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts for a time overnight. Elsewhere across the country, it stays windy. The rain turns to showers, and the bulk of these showers will be in the west, with some clear spells further east, but with a blustery feel overnight. It's not going to be a particularly chilly start to Thursday. Having said that, it stays cold across Scotland, with further hill snow expected into the day on Thursday, outbreaks of rain at lower levels, and certainly plenty of showers or longer spells of rain elsewhere across the country. The spells of rain will be interspersed by brighter intervals, and it's not going to be quite as windy as it has been during the last 24 hours, with wind gusts of 40 to 50 miles an hour. 12 Celsius in the south, 5 to 8 further north, so staying chilly